pause once again on this Friday to obey the wondrous cross on which the Prince of Glory died. Thank you that we live in a nation trouble and enjoy. You are the one who asks us, each of us, to live a life worthy of your calling, of our knowledge in the words of the hymn. It is hard to work for God, and God moves in a mysterious way. Be with every member of this chamber as you have blessed them, the opportunity to serve the people of our nation. Bless them and their families, as well as those who support or even challenge them. Help them to withstand open criticism when they know what is right before you and their conscience. Often members of Parliament are characterized by half-truths and attributed motives that are beneath them. Hold them at such times with personal integrity and compassion for those most in need. Having called them to serve others to the best of their abilities, lift them even higher by your grace and power to live and work for your greater glory.
Good morning, honorable members. This House is now in session. Members, I have with me the minutes of our meeting held on Monday, the 12th of February, 2018. The 12th. Pardon me? February, yes.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I beg to move that the minutes referred to be taken as read.
Honorable members, the question is that those minutes so referred be taken as read. Honorable members in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it. Unless there are any observations or corrections, then let those minutes stand confirmed. Thank you. Members, I am not yet in receipt of the minutes of our meeting held on Tuesday, the 27th of February, and I ask for the usual order, giving the motion that they be deferred. Minutes for the 27th to be deferred, yes.
Again, I beg to move that the minutes referred to be taken as read.
Or be deferred, deferred.
Be deferred, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Be deferred.
What else will you look puzzled? Yes. Honorable members, the question that those minutes. Huh? A second, please.
Second, please. David.
Right. Honorable members, the question is that those minutes be deferred. Honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it. Yes, Mr. Clerk of Parliament.
Announcements by your Honourable Speaker.
And
Messages from Her Excellency the Governor General. Petitions, papers.
yes,
Mr.
Honorable
Speaker, I'm commanded to lay the duties, taxes, and other payments exemption Horace Beckles Order 2018, the value-added tax refund Protos Inc. Order 2018, the duties, taxes, and other payments exemption Ray Carter Fabrications Inc. Order 2018, value-added tax Stephen Clark Order 2018, duties, taxes, and other payments exemption H.N. Rogers Stationery Limited, Order 2018.
Member Blaze.
These I'm laying, of course, on behalf of the Honorable Minister of Finance.
Yes, Member Blaze.
Government notices, private members' notices, notices of questions, reports from select committees, first readings of bills, statements by ministers, congratulatory and/or obituary speeches, personal explanations, motions for leave of absence, oral replies to questions, notices of motions for the adjournment of the House on matters of urgent public importance, orders of the day.
Yes, Honourable Member.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move the suspension of Standing Orders 6, 16, 18, 20, 42.5, 43, and 44 for the remainder of today's sitting.
Honourable members, the question is that those standing orders so mentioned be suspended for the remainder of the sitting. Honourable members in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it. Accordingly, those said standing orders now stand suspended for the remainder of the sitting. Government business is the order of the day.
Speaker, I want to revert to government notices.
Yes?
No, just came down. Government notices.
Yes. Beg to give notice of a resolution to grant the sum of $3,555,470 from the Consolidated Fund and to place it at the disposal of the government to supplement the estimates 2017-18 as shown in the supplementary estimates number 20, 2017-18, which form the schedule to this resolution.
Yes?
Give notice of the bill. Give notice of the bill. Give notice of the bill.
Oh. Mr. Speaker, sir, I also beg to give notice of the Securities Validation of Fees Bill 2018. Second.
Member Blaze. Yes.
It's here, I just give notice.
Sorry, notice.
We committed about first readings of bills.
Yes.
First reading of the same bill. First reading of the same bill. But it can remain on the order paper, you don't have the bill.
Beg to move that the Securities Validation of Fees Bill 2018 be read a first time. Second, please.
Honourable members, the question is that the bill so mentioned be read a first time. Honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
So you could revert to government business.
Yes?
And order number 21.
One resolution.
One resolution by 3 hours. Order number 21, in the name of the Honorable Leader of the House, to move that the House resolve itself into Committee of Supply to consider the grant of sums of money for the service of this island.
Yes, Honourable Leader of the House.
Let me just check again. Mr. Speaker, sir, I beg to move that Your Honor do now leave the chair and the House resolve itself into Committee of Supply to consider the grant of sums of money for the service of this island.
Honourable members, the question is that I now do leave the chair and the House resolve itself into Committee of Supply for consideration of the mentioned matter. Honourable members in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
The Housing Committee is in Committee of Supply.
In the name of the Honorable Minister of Transport and Works, to move the passing of a resolution to grant the sum of $5 million from the Consolidated Fund and to place it at the disposal of the government to supplement the estimates 2017 to 2018 as shown in the supplementary estimates number 18, 2017 to 2018, which form the schedule to the resolution. Head 4, Ministry of Transport and Works, in the amount of $5 million.
Our member for St. Philip North.
Mr. Chairman, the sum of $5 million is required with respect to the operations of the Transport Board. The proposed use of these funds are as follows in relation to the sum of $1.8 million to facilitate payment to Simpson Motors to bring the Transport Board's account within the agreed credit arrangement, and of course the sum of $3.2 million to assist with payments to other critical creditors. Indeed, Mr. Chairman, for the past 2 months or so, we have been experiencing some challenges with respect to availability and, of course, servicing some of the routes, and particularly some routes that service some of the schools in this country. And indeed, Mr. Chairman, these funds will be utilized, as I was made aware by the technical department at the Transport Board, will be utilized, of course, to further purchase some of the parts for some additional buses that are out of the system, and, of course, to ensure that we get our fleet back up to the total that we are accustomed to. Indeed, Mr. Chairman, too, that has been coupled with the fact that inspections, daily inspections, have been severely hampered by the use of the Hoist Act, the Ministry of Transport and Works, the fact that it's obviously out of operation for some time, and I have been informed only yesterday by the Chief Licensing Officer that they received those parts. It's a 40-year-old hoist, Mr. Chairman, and of course, the parts, some parts are obsolete, and they have to make up some of the parts, and my information is that that hoist will be back in order to ensure that there are daily inspections of these buses. And of course, we have to utilize the other private sector players, and we have to fit into their schedule. So I think that is good news from our point of view. And the fact too that we have agreed today to pay the critical creditors so that they can provide the necessary parts, and of course, other service providers to get these buses out. But Mr. Chairman, sir, I want to speak briefly on the Transport Board, because the fact is that, Mr. Chairman, the challenges that we are now experiencing must be looked at in the context of the existing fleet was existing at this time. Mr. Chairman, some time ago, I had gone through the fleet at the Transport Board, and of course, set out the ages of those buses present at the Transport Board. Mr. Chairman, there are some 230 buses at the Transport Board. Now, they have, when you look at the summary of the buses in the fleet, Mr. Chairman, you have Mercedes-Benz 1997. We have 59 of those buses. We have the Hino buses 1997, 18 of those buses. Mercedes-Benz 2000, 87 buses. Hino 2000, 14 buses. Mercedes-Benz 2004, 24 buses. Mercedes Senior 2004, 5 buses, Mercedes-Benz 2006, 62 buses, and Mercedes Sprinters 2006 buses, and there are 3 buses. So we have, Mr. Chairman, 77 buses, 21 years old, 101 buses, 18 years, 29 buses, 14 years old, and 65 buses, 12 years old. I say that, Mr. Chairman, because certainly we have not purchased buses since 2006. And given the ages of these buses, and given the fact, Mr. Chairman, that the public transport runs to a scheduled service, and they have to be constantly out there servicing those routes, we expect, given the age of these buses, that there will be a need of repairs. In fact, my information is that a report, when from the secretary from the ministry was asked to give me analysis of those buses, the report is that 70 of those buses go off the roads every day. And that for major defects, some running defects, and of course you have to get them back in time to get to the total so that you can service the country adequately. It is not like the private transport, Mr. Chairman. Of course, they operate to a route, but they can put down their bus during the morning time, peak hours, and then during the afternoon time, sit down and wait to peak hours and come back at 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock. So there's less wear and tear on their vehicles, although their buses might be of the same age too. But the fact is that we have to be constantly servicing the public. So, Chairman, sir, the Transport Board purchased some buses in 2006. I think the tune was $22 million. And one bus cost about $340,000 to the Transport Board. Now, when we look, Mr. Chairman, if you look, even you glance, and you ask yourself, based on the cost and based on the expenditure you've actually paid out in relation to the maintenance of these buses, then you could only come up with one simple answer. What I'm saying, Mr. Chairman, sir, is that over time, the cost of maintenance, the cost of diesel, all of those components have been the major part of the Transport Board expenditure over time. So, Mr. Chairman, at present, we have issues with bus availability. No. And there was a lot of hue and cry in relation to the employment of a fleet consultant at the Transport Board. But I want to say, Chairman, that sometime in 1998, the said fleet consultant was employed and even approached by the Transport Board by the Barbados Labour Party. But I wouldn't get into the details of the arrangement they had with him. There will come another time for that. But I want to say, Mr. Chairman, sir, I want to, because I had the notes here to hand, so I'm trying to get them. But even, Mr. Chairman, the report on the state-owned enterprises, I believe that the Minister of Finance referred to in the estimates. You know, that, and even our reporting on the performance of the Transport Board during the employment of the consultant is the fact that we've been able to bring expenditure down, Mr. Chairman, by not looking at the traditional sources but of course, going outside those markets and getting some prices that brought expenditure down for the Transport Board. Indeed, the board expenditure, Mr. Chairman, for the period April to December 2017 came down, and of course, it represented an extremely major decrease in expenditure to the Transport Board. And there were major savings, Mr. Chairman, major savings in relation to bus repair, bus maintenance. Of course, Mr. Chairman, the reduction in areas of bus repairs and bus maintenance is due to the fact, as I said before, the ordering of parts directly from the source at greatly reduced prices. In fact, I remember when the Transport Board was ridiculed for engaging in purchasing transmissions for, in fact, no, the repairs of transmissions for $40,000. And we have been able to reduce that significantly by purchasing reconditioned transmissions, which is still working on the buses, to a cost about $3,000 US, Mr. Chairman. And that is a fact. I can't remember the name of the company, but I will provide those details later. The fact, too, Mr. Chairman, is that the development or the refocusing of Quality Assurance Department, the department that is responsible for the repairs, for in-house repairs at the Transport Board, is that they have now been able to concentrate on in-house repairs by virtue of course, purchasing of new equipment. So repairs that had to be outsourced can now be done in-house, particularly Mangrove and Spikestown and those areas. They have no equipment that they can provide repairs to buses that once before will have gone out to service providers. So there have been significant savings with respect to that. So, Mr. Chairman, sir, the fact is that we have to now find immediate arrangement to service those commuters who, of course, still have confidence in the public transport system. Mr. Chairman, the fact that we have sought to integrate the private sector within the public transport system started with the taxi project. That project started with 2 routes, ED Village and Sturgis. Now, my information is that the ED Village route has been particularly successful, but we have challenges on the Sturgis route. And indeed, Mr. Chairman, we have to now look at having a formal integration of the private sector along with the public transport so that we can move passengers. In fact, one person at NTW before he retired said that there's a view that terminals are only built for public transport buses, but he is of the view that he don't see why private transport buses cannot go into terminals built by the state. Now, we are saying that, yes, there already exists an integration, but TASI really is a formal integration of the process using the Transport Board along on the scheduled routes along with the private sector. So Mr. Chairman, only recently, Cabinet agreed to a further expansion of the taxi project. This is an interim arrangement because we have to pay our creditors and pay the service providers to get these buses out. We believe within a couple of months, we should be back up to the availability to move passengers in relation to Transport Board buses. But at the same time, we must look now at moving forward and moving these passengers in particular routes. Now, Mr. Chairman, our information, we have information, certain information on the Transport Board in relation to school children and their routes to be serviced. And we have done our research. And we've met with the various stakeholders. We've even met with the public service vehicles owners. We have to get back to them. Yes, we have to get back to them, but we had a discussion with them. We didn't ignore them. And certainly, Mr. Chairman, we are now seeking to move forward with this project. One, we have, of course, go to the public for expression of interest. That is being done. Secondly, Mr. Chairman, Cabinet agreed to the utilization of lands close to Fairchild Street, that is the old market, owned by BADMC, the Ministry of Agriculture, and they have accepted our request, and we are moving forward with that. We hope to have necessary infrastructure in, so that, of course, if the Transport Board is, a commuter now have a choice, in that he is in the terminal, and of course, if he believes that he has to move at a certain time, he can also go and get a private sector bus and move to the same destination as the Transport Board would have placed him. So those arrangements are being put in place. And I want to say, Mr. Chairman, that the Minister of Finance too has said in this estimates that, that Transport Board would have to look at the purchasing of buses. In fact, we've gotten funds from the Ministry of Finance to purchase some buses. The question is, Mr. Chairman, whether we should look now at public transport in the light of the fact that we've been able to push our energy program and a green economy, and whether we should look at purchasing electric buses or some hybrid buses, because of course we have given a commitment to this in the throne speech. There was a commitment by this government to purchase electric buses. I certainly believe, Mr. Chairman, that there will be tremendous cost savings in relation if we purchase or start with a pilot project. I know for a fact, Mr. Chairman, that the Ministry of Energy, they have been in consultation with the Ministry of Transport to purchase at least 2 electric buses as a pilot project. And that has been going, I think that is with the IDB. That's been going extremely well. And certainly, Mr. Chairman, when we look at the benefits, of using alternative energy, using electric buses or even using powered by solar, the benefits are great. In fact, the discussions have gone a very long way with the Ministry of Energy and the Ministry of Transport and Works. In fact, Mr. Chairman, the ministries, they have actually decided, and only recently for the discussions, we said that we can propose some routes for the use of electric vehicle bus, particularly routes that would provide the best opportunity to test these vehicles over long and short routes. And certainly the cost savings, Mr. Chairman, when we did the analysis, if we seek to move 10% of our fleet towards electric vehicles, it will result in $2 million savings in relation to diesel fuel. Imagine, Mr. Chairman, then that you move now to about 50 or 100 buses by using electric buses. Imagine the savings, Mr. Chairman, that we be able, not only fuel, but also maintenance. Also maintenance, Mr. Chairman. So I believe that a future public transport policy should include the use of these electric vehicle buses, even if we start with a pilot project. And certainly the Ministry of Transport and Works, I know that my permanent secretary is really, really and truly enthusiastic, because she was responsible for developing a clean transport policy, Mr. Chairman. That clean transport policy should come to Cabinet very shortly. And inclusive in relation to that clean transport policy is the use of electric buses. the incorporation into the public transport fleet of electric vehicles or energy-efficient vehicles. So I believe, Mr. Chairman, that the savings is tremendous. It would involve, of course, some training, which we believe that could be had, because, of course, once we make the necessary contacts and the necessary consultations, and, of course, have the training pass from those responsible for those buses on to the transport board, skilled mechanics and other technical persons, then I think that it will augur well for the future of transport. In fact, Mr. Chairman, many of the public transport systems all over the world have moved away and gone towards the use of electric vehicles or even solar-powered vehicles. And I think, Mr. Chairman, that a further analysis of the cost savings, we did an analysis of a quick analysis of the cost savings. As I said, about $2 million in savings if we look at 10% of the fleet. And then, of course, the transport board, given the fact that there's a fluctuation in terms of diesel costs, but we did an average costing, and of course the maintenance, the total bus maintenance of 2016 and 2017 was about $18 million. 18. So I just want to draw the house notice that if you really embark on the full fleet, even if we retrofit the fleet, and if you purchase, the cost up front, of course, Mr. Chairman, the upfront cost of an electric bus is prohibitive. But of course, there are dealers out there that I believe that once we do the necessary research and have the adequate negotiations, we'll be able to get a price that, because if the transport board purchased a bus in 2006 for $350,000, and you can purchase an electric bus in this day and age for $320,000 Belgian dollars, which will result in tremendous savings to the transport board, then I believe that it will be a unit well purchased. And in keeping with saving money for the taxpayers. Certainly, Mr. Chairman, I just want to repeat, the fact is that the bus situation in relation to school children, there was a view out there that, the transport board is going towards coaches. I want to clear the air on that, Mr. Chairman. When we spoke to the Ministry of Education, the suggestion was made of coaches. But we said we have to do expression of interest, because we can't select one particular brand of vehicle. We have to do an expression of interest so that all the players will have a way to participate in the process. And so those schools thus far that we have identified, there are some, but I want to say, Mr. Chairman, too, that the course providers approach transport board. The course providers approach the transport board. But the fact is, and as the former Minister of Transport will know, that BT coaches, they cannot stop at bus stops. They have to only do tours. But under the Transport Authority Act and the Road Traffic Act, the Chief Licensing Officer and the Director of Transport Authority can issue special licenses for special situations. So, Mr. Chairman, when some lawyers from the other side start to talk about it, I was saying to myself, how comes they didn't read the Road Traffic Act properly? or read the Transport Authority Act properly, because it empowers the director of the Transport Authority and the chief legislative officer to do these things. To do these things. That is the law. So we've said secondary schools and some primary schools that are impacted upon, given the fact that once we receive, in fact not once, we will receive these funds, we will start to purchase these parts, start working on getting these buses back into the system, and by that time, the expansion of the taxi project will be in operation, moving these people from various terminals, from the Fairchild Street terminal, from the other two terminals, Spikestown and the other terminal, like, it's not coming to my head, Princess Alice, sorry. Then this arrangement, we said, will be for approximately about 3 months. 3 months, you've done all the costings for 3 months. And if it so happens, Mr. Chairman, that it is working well, there's a possibility that we can move it towards 3 more months until the end of the school year. Because the interest is to move these children from school, move them from school back to home at a good time. And so we have the model already. The model exists already with the taxi project. So we can use this model, Mr. Chairman, now, again, to expand it, and not only school children, but also passenger evenings and during peak hours, where we have challenges, College Savannah, Bayfield, St. Lawrence Castle, those other routes. We can utilize those units to move these passengers out, of course, within the arrangement that we have at time. So, Mr. Chairman, I just want to say that we already have the taxi project in place, which is a formal integration process of the private sector. We know the reason why the transport board was set up in 1955, because, of course, the challenges that existed among the private operators and the fact that they called for certain concessions and the state at the time, of course, they were challenged to give these concessions, and it resulted in a total nationalization of the public transport system. What is happening now, Mr. Chairman, is that the state now will have to make a decision. The state now have to continue with public transport alongside a formal integration process with the private sector, assisting moving passengers. And indeed, Mr. Chairman, that is where I believe we have to go. But the fact is, I want to repeat that a public transport system will have now to include in it, again, the use of electric buses. And as I said, the Ministry of Energy, they have done some cost savings. We have done some cost savings too at the Ministry of Transport and Works. And I'm saying that we would bring to Cabinet shortly a position of the public transport board in relation to the use of electric vehicles in the public transport system, the pilot project, and of course, give all the savings. And I'm saying to you're not that, Mr. Chairman, I'm saying that we have a golden opportunity now to utilize the funds available to purchase some electric buses within the public transport policy, which will redound to the benefit of the transport board. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Honourable member for St. Lucie.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Chairman, move that head 40 Stanford.
I beg to second.
Honourable member for St. Lucie.
Mr. Chairman, there is no doubt that this debate is a very important debate when one considers that you are dealing with the productive forces of the country, because the transportation system, I know there have been a lot of criticism, but when one considers that the transportation system plays a very important role in the productivity of the country, one would understand the importance of the transport board and also the private sector as they relate to the distribution of services to ensure that the workers and the school children of Barbados, that they are serviced properly. it is no doubt that it has been under stress. And the reason why it has been under stress is that in the times of plenty, the previous government did not make the necessary provision to ensure that the service operated properly. For example, they could have easily used the opportunity to make Spikestone a hub, because when one looks to see what is occurring, it does not make sense having 7 or 8 routes leaving Bridgetown, going to the north, and a person in Sunset Crest having to look to see what bus is coming, when clearly there could be a service moving from Bridgetown to Spikestone called the Spikestone service, so that whoever is standing at any particular location could easily get on the bus without having to look or allowing the bus service to pass them. And that also will create some efficiencies, because it means that you're able to better run your buses, and the demand for the buses in the north would not be as great between the Bridgetown to the Spikestone. And the present confusion that occurs in the Bridgetown location will not have to occur, where people sometimes complain that one particular area is receiving transportation while the others are not. Because if you had a bus going to Spikestone, whether you're from Josie Hill, Pike Corner, or Colnetown, or Boscobel, or any of those locations, you wouldn't have to worry about a Boscobel bus, a Pike Corner bus, or a Colnetown bus. What you worry is that you will get on the bus coming from Bridgetown, and you will go to Spikestone, and then at that location, then you will have to worry how you will move from there. But as long as the confusion remains in the Bridgetown area, you are going to get the amount of slack you are getting, because some people will believe that there's a preference. So we need to solve it. But if there's going to be a problem, let us decrease the problem by creating the problem further north, but not in the Bridgetown area. Because once you get to Spikestone, the possibility of you getting a service, not necessarily transport board service, will be greater. Another thing, and I support the minister, and he must be applauded for the uses of the renewable energy, when one considers now that Barbados is moving towards that, and they could not have started a better place than St. Lucie, because as you know, Mr. Chairman, as it stands now, we are supplying more than what is needed from the Trent station. And when one considers what is going to be happening at Lambert's, and if we push the button further, what might be happening at Lowlands, then it is clear that St. Lucie will be a net producer of renewable energy, where we will now be able to continue to export renewable energy to the other parishes. And once this continues, it will reduce the demand for foreign exchange. I agree that in the initial stage, that the cost of the equipment is going to be great, but when one looks at the opportunity cost and the long-term savings and the local input, it makes sense for us not to delay, but to encourage the Barbados Light and Power to push full steam ahead and ensure that they move towards 100% renewable energy. Because when one also considers that this government had the foresight not only to look at wind, but to also look at not only wind and photovoltaic, but also look at the possibility when the new factory is constructed, using the composting and the etc., one will recognize that once we move there, we could easily move to 100% in a short space of time, because when one looks across Barbados, one will recognize that we have a lot of trees, and that is a cheap source of material for creating renewable energy, etc. So, Mr. Chairman, the Transport Board, as it stands today, is in need for restructuring, and the Minister have highlighted that he is on top of it, and he has gone in the right direction by having electric buses and so on. But I also refer to the Minister, and I know that he is very keen on this one, that we have to be very careful when we think about the number of vehicles that could easily be on our road system, when we also have to look not only at the cost of the vehicles, but the demand that they might be having on the road structure. So what we might need to do is to look at a suggestion that has been discussed already, and I know he's very keen on it, where we look at the possibility that on mornings that we move more traffic, and on evenings we move more traffic by doing what we would have done in the early 70s when we allow our transportation system to be upgraded from the small carts to the minibuses and so on. What is needed now is an opportunity and an incentive window for the ZRs to increase their sizes up to the minibuses, and the possibilities of the incentives being passed so that those guys who have the minibuses could elevate to the same size as the Transport Board, so that the bellyaching you hear on mornings and the bellyaching you hear on evenings, you would not have now to put up with that, for the simple reason that that decision alone can double the number of persons that will be able to travel in those peak hours without actually having to increase the number of vehicles on the road. And once you get that, it means then that you're able to cut down on the traffic congestion and so on, and you're able to create a better working atmosphere and a better feeling among your working population, and it allows you also to better distribute your vehicles among the school children and the workers of Barbados. Mr. Chairman, sometimes we might not realize it, but gridlock can create stress. And the faster we do it, we move away from it, especially on mornings when people are going to work, the better it is. Because it does not make sense having gridlock at your roundabouts, etc., and not doing anything about it, because you will pay for it. Because by the time that worker gets to work, that worker might not be of any use to themselves, and it might decrease the productivity. And that is something that we cannot afford. And another thing I know the Minister is looking at, and I hope he looks at it pretty much faster, is that there are persons, I believe that if we get the right type of buses and we put the right conditions within the buses, that there are some persons who might be quite prepared to put down their vehicles and quite prepared to pay an additional fee so that they would not have to worry about the stress on the roads, but be quite keen, as you might have seen elsewhere within the world, where they are quite prepared to have an elevated service that can easily be provided by the Transport Board. And if the Minister is not keen of allowing the Transport Board to do it, it's a service that he can entice the private sector to look at. There is no doubt, sir, that we are the government that always coming up with things that are proactive, that are new, innovative, and the only one regret about it is that when the money is flowing, we never have it. We always have to correct the errors that have been left, and there's no doubt when one understands the accrual system, one would understand the amount of money that we had to pay on behalf of the Barbados Labour Party that would have been hidden are not brought to books at the time that we had to bring to books. And that is why sometimes people think that we have received a lot of money, but when you really do the analysis, yes, it's true, but we had a lot of debt to pay. And you can see here, sir, that we have a lot of money to pay on behalf of the Transport Board, and it has occurred because when in times of so-called plenty, the number of buses and the right type of buses were not purchased, and we were left holding a bag of a lot of debt. And we had to correct it, but we are now, we have been able to erase a lot of that, and we are now at the stage where we are about to launch fully our program, and the public must appreciate that we have tried to ensure that we look after their interests, and that is exactly, and that is why we are not saying it as a problem, but we say it as a challenge, and I'm very happy the way the minister has approached this. It's very good to hear that that something that I've always complained about, that whenever you hear the Barbados Labour Party complaining about an issue, all you have to do is go and search the file, because once you search the file, you will find out that the reason why they're complaining is because there's something that they did already, and they want you not to understand that they're past that road already. So I'm not surprised when I hear the criticism about the consultant, only to find out that the consultant is not new to Barbados, but might be new to this government, and that the Barbados Labour Party, that they have criticized the same self-consultant that they brought to this country. So, Mr. Chairman, I want to say that I support this supplementary, and I want to say that I think that once the minister continues on this trend, that we can easily help solve the transportation problems, because, as I said, transportation is key to productivity. Transportation, if done correctly, and can also save us large sums of foreign exchange. And it is no doubt that productivity and foreign exchange is key for us moving this economy forward. I thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Honourable Member for Christchurch South.
Mr. Chairman, sir, thank you for the opportunity to say a few words as we consider as a Parliament the supplementary of $5 million under Head 40 for the Transport Board. And indeed, I want to start by thanking the Minister, Honourable Minister, who introduced the resolution for the detail which he would have shared with this Parliament and with the people of Barbados in respect to how this money is going to be spent. And I think that is vitally important, even as we speculate as to how best we can treat transport going forward. The point is that the Transport Board's operation is, in its present form, an expensive operation, and it is something which we need to address as a country. And I have no difficulty at all with the breadth of his presentation, understanding very clearly that government is a continuum, and those who may want to associate his comments with, say, being too late in the term of an administration, are failing to see the importance of keeping thought alive in our country, and that the Transport Board, as it stands now, is not going to change overnight, and we must therefore share all ideas with each other and with the board in particular, who make the decisions. And you know, Mr. Chairman, we need to start by thanking those operators, those persons responsible for the operation of the board too. The drivers and the assistants, the persons who supervise our terminals, the mechanics who do the repairs, etc., the managers and the officers in the board of itself, who work under challenging conditions. It's strange that on my drive in here this morning, I came down River Road from the hospital roundabout, as I call it, and would have looked across at the development of the river and the river terminal, which is an excellent intervention. I hope the Honourable Minister has time to benefit from the integration of that terminal. It has come a long way to the concepts which I would have shared with the team at the Transport Board at the time of my stewardship as Minister of Transport and Works. And I really want to congratulate him on the direction in which that has gone. But then a little further down the road, of course, is what has become the hub of public transport in Barbados, or one of the hubs, because it's Cheapside too, on Fairchild Street. What I was reflecting on this morning, though, was not so much the bus stand itself, but the building opposite the bus stand, which is one of the first public buildings constructed by the government of Barbados after independence. It used to be the National Insurance Building. And I thought to myself, wouldn't it be wonderful if we could have that building renovated, restored, and made possible probably a headquarters for the Transport Board itself. The Transport Board needs a headquarters. A lot of us do not know, may not be aware, that the conditions under which staff work in the Transport Board are not excellent, and public servants have had to face these challenges for a long time, and we've come a long way in terms of making these conditions much better. So I thought I would make that plug for the board and its management and its ability to supervise and do its work in an effective environment. And I think that will be necessary as we think about going forward. The minister quite rightly mentioned the question of bus availability and spoke to the fact that the numbers, when they are below a certain level, makes it almost impossible to provide reliable bus services. I think sometimes when I observe the operations, the terminal I pass by every morning at Oyston, for instance, and at least see that there is the movement of so many thousands of people on a daily basis, we again have to give credit that at least something is working. A lot of the persons travel now by private transport, but of course the peculiarities associated with the operation of private transport does not necessarily impact them in the way that the cost of providing services impacts the Transport Board. They are not, that is the private transport, are not necessarily on a time service, although they have their schedules, and they're known, of course, to the persons who use the private transport frequently, and they're well known to them. And they do start early in the morning. They get a lot of people moving from Silver Sands and St. Christopher area and Enterprise at 5 o'clock, 4 in the morning. They're up and they're moving, along with the Transport Board, who would have its schedules associated with the same peak hours. As he rightly said, the minister, the fact is that during the off-peak hours, the private sector vehicles have the comfort of being able to take a break and come back again in the afternoon when they are peak. So I think one of the things that must be considered in going forward with the Transport Board is a properly timetable scheduled service, which would be available for all who use the public service to peruse. We used to have a much better schedule available to the public in years gone by, but this service has declined significantly. And I really think it is time that the Transport Board looks at establishing within the advertising or the information on the bus stops, along with all the other messages which we may want to share with the public. We should be able by now to establish timetables which say that if you're standing at the Hastings bus stop, for instance, opposite the Richard Haynes Boardwalk, you're standing there at 7:30, your next bus to the airport would arrive, say, at 7:45 or 8 o'clock. And you know what you can expect. This obtains in most organized cities, Mr. Chairman, and it allows it benefits the passenger, of course, but it also benefits the operator of the transport system, the transport board, because they then have a way of organizing where their buses are. This schedule, I've watched it. I mean, Barbados must be one of the only place where, you know, a bus driver would get in a bus at 9 o'clock in Fairchild Street, destined for the airport, and would attempt to arrive at the Grantley Islands Airport by 9:15. Almost oblivious to who may want to use the bus service along that what should be a decent hour drive. If he gets to one of these scheduled bus stops a little early, my view, Mr. Chairman, is that the schedule should require that he waits until his departure time. So he or she, the bus driver that is, has a timetable which they're operating under. So as he traverses from Fairchild Street to the airport, he knows that he has, say, 4 intermediate stops at which he has to move on a schedule. This would help, I think, to organize. And I submit, a well-rolled out timetable system of that nature would redound to the benefit. I would probably demonstrate that we don't need as many buses as we pretend we need now. This is something which, this is the hard work which I think the Transport Board must be charged, the personnel in the management systems of the Transport Board, the operational systems of the Transport Board, must be charged with the responsibility of delivering to the policymakers so that we can carry out this change. I have no problem with the working towards the integration of private sector participation in the transport system. The minister has made it quite clear what the legal framework is that allows such an integration to occur. So we do not have to be walking around threatening that we are breaking any laws. The regulations will be set by the Barbados Licensing Authority and the Barbados Transport Authority. So I have absolutely no difficulty with that at all. I'm, of course, excited by his comments too, sir, on the change from the suggestion that we move towards green transport. I think that is what do you call it, a slam dunk? Yeah, and progressive, but it's an easy one. Its benefits are obvious in terms of the saving on fossil fuel importations. I mean, I sometimes drive a diesel vehicle. Of course, we would have bought these diesel vehicles with the understanding that diesel was cheap. It is no longer that cheap. It does last longer. It appears to last longer in the vehicle that I use. But of course, I was very concerned, of course, and did some checking on I think it is a city in Germany, is it, that has Bonn, that has said that in short order there will be a ban on diesel and gasoline vehicles in that city. And there are a number of cities in the world which are moving towards these kind of programs. It is useful for our environment. It is useful for our health. And therefore, I certainly think it is something which Barbados, too, must look at. And as the minister said, we need to get some pilots on the ground almost immediately. There are providers out there who are anxious to participate in these kind of programs by the provision of these electric substitute vehicles. We've seen it significantly growing by way of private transport, cars, etc. And more persons are importing and quite rightly using the electrical vehicles. I want to say a little bit, though, in terms of maintenance costs, because before I sit down, because the minister made the point that there's some $18 million annually which is used by the Transport Board to maintain its fleet, and this is related to both mechanical and, importantly, Mr. Chairman, and sometimes we forget this point, that a lot of this money is also used in body work, because it is, yes, the minister mentioned specifically transmissions, etc., which are very critical in terms of the operation. I congratulate him for searching around and making sure he gets good prices for these repairs and replacement of transmissions. But we also need to build a proper, an adequate, let me use that term, an adequate bodywork repair business in Barbados. There are a couple of providers out there, yes. There's we speak often of, and I call the name L&M, which does a lot of bodywork construction. But sometimes when you look at the transport board buses, you're a little disappointed at the quality of the bodywork repairs. And I will go no further. But this is the presence of rivets and bolts where proper welding and bodywork finishing should be applied with the appropriate paintwork is sometimes a little bit of a shocker and a little disappointing. We do not do well in terms of maintenance. I mean, again, in my drive down from the ministry again, you looked across at Enmore and almost spoiling the structure associated with the new Dos Santos, Best Dos Santos laboratory is about 6 or 8 retired ambulances, if not retired, retiring ambulances parked up now for the longest while in that rotunda. And I mean, I argue every time I visit, I talk with my friend, the mechanic there, the guy who does the repairs, and I understand his challenges. But we really, Mr. Chairman, need to do better in Barbados with the repair of our equipment and vehicles. We say the same thing about our public buildings, and to some extent, some of our private buildings. But we need to understand that there's a percentage of expense which has to be allocated on an annual basis to these kind of maintenance programs. We need to understand that the purchase of spare parts at reasonable rate prices is important to this kind of schedule, and we need to stop, therefore, Mr. Chairman, throwing away useful pieces of equipment with the view that it is 6 years old, or it's 12 years old, or it is 20 years old. The minister was careful to read out his schedule of buses, and though there are peculiar circumstances associated with some of the models of vehicles which he mentioned, there is definitely a call, sir, for these vehicles. I always cite the comparison. I hope when I get chronologically the age of a 16-year-old bus, nobody decides that I should be discarded, and I hope that I will still be able to serve some useful purpose, Mr. Chairman, in terms of this beautiful Barbados that we live in. So I would have to conclude that suggestion with the fact that age is a number, Mr. Chairman. I dare not say it's just a number, but age is a number. And we need, therefore, to get down to the serious work of looking at good maintenance programs, provide the infrastructure, that is the appropriate garages in which this work can be carried out. If it is private sector work, let us get out there and negotiate with the private sector. If it is public sector work, let us get out there, set the appropriate areas up, and they're already there. Let us tool them up, places like UCAL and other public sector repair shops. There's a massive repair workshop at the Pine. I mean, if the private sector were to could get a handle on that workshop, I believe they will make buses, far as repair buses in that workshop. This thing has a massive amount of space. It has tools, it has lathes that haven't turned out for a number. You know, sir, we have to really scrutinize some of the things that we have left behind and that we need to really grab hold of and bring back on board and integrate into our program. So, Mr. Chairman, sir, I certainly do want to associate myself with the objectives of this resolution, the $5 million for the Transport Board. It is needed. It will be properly applied, I'm sure, but I hope that my comments will help to direct us as we go forward in terms of probably demonstrating in the very near future that Barbados wants to take a turn for the better in terms of provision of transport for our people, whether it be entirely public transport, whether it be private transport, or whether ideally it is a hybrid which sees benefits both for public operation and the private operators too. Mr. Chairman, sir, I'm obliged to you.
Honourable member for St. Michael South Central.
Mr. Chairman, I rise to say a few words on this supplementary provision for the Transport Board, and of course to associate myself with the efforts to bring public transportation into the modern age. And I think the work of the ministry, the work of the Transport Board, the work of the Transport Authority should be saluted for all that they've been doing. The member for St. Philip North, in my view, is on the right track in several respects. And yes, it's a sizable supplementary resolution, but it is, in my view, $5 million. But in the context of what we have come to expect from the Transport Board, I think it is not an unreasonable ask. The minister pointed out that it has been some time since the Transport Board has had the addition of new buses to its fleet. And I accept that it is time to add a few new vehicles to its fleet. But I am of the view, and I feel this very firmly, and certainly I recall sitting on the other benches with the same honorable minister, current honorable minister, the member for St. Philip North, when we thought that there was always this, there was an indecency about the haste with which we would just buy buses. Small wonder when the minister is able to reflect on brand new buses, no sooner than they get out the port, they're in the workshop, you know, something wrong or fundamental things, right? Transmissions and this kind of thing gone bad. I think that, you know, I think everyone in here is well aware, those who are mechanically inclined and those who aren't, a diesel engine is something that could literally last for 100 years, you know. A diesel engine is something you can put down, go back at 15, 20 years and turn it over, and it can work. I mean, it is, they are known for their capacity to be maintained quite easily. And in that regard, I feel that even if it was a case of the reality of our economic times that forced us not to be able to engage in some of those previous practices, trying to get more life out of your fleet made a lot of sense to me. And I speak, of course, not only having had the benefit of the words of the minister and having read briefs, etc., being a member of cabinet. I speak, Mr. Chairman, having had the benefit of a site visit to the Transport Board's operation in St. Philip, where a consultant that I understand was hired by both governments, I mean, a gentleman who had a team, he was rebuilding engines and putting buses back on the road. My information is that there were something like 27 engines that he rebuilt at a cost of just over $300,000. Now, if you had to buy 27 brand new engines, you would be talking millions. And it is in that context that, again, I think that the effort at repairing your fleet and not being so quick to put the buses in mothballs as soon as they get a problem and look for a new one, but rather try to work with what you have. Refurbish and rebuild where you can, retrofit the mechanical end of things, and then, of course, the whole interior thing is, I mean, we talk about opportunities to small business people, et cetera, you know, the upholstery and so on, provide all those opportunities. There's no reason why we should be rushing and jumping and just buying new buses. And when you drive past every single transport board depot, you can see a whole slew of buses parked up that could be, in some instances, resurrected and put back on the road, or in other instances even converted to cash in order to support the operation. So I think that that effort is one that is quite progressive, and I again salute the member for St. Philip North and his team for doing. One of the other things I want to also speak about is the Transport Authority Service Integration Project. That was where PSVs were encouraged to work along with the Transport Board on certain routes. The Transport Authority provided superintendents of the program to make sure that standards were maintained, to make sure that customer service and the like was kept at a high level. That too, something that we have heard discussed easily from the time I was in primary school and probably even before, but it actually happened by this government under this minister. I think in the pilot program, it was Martins Bay, Sturgis, and Edie Village that it was started, but the whole idea is working with the PSVs and trying to get them to step up and in some ways get us away from this whole, we talk about a minibus culture and this maverick mentality. But if you are forced to work along with, again, a proper authority, things like standards, things like the schedule of operations, you can't just turn up when you want to turn up. You know, all of these things. And that was a project that I thought was extremely, well, how should I put it, trailblazing. And I understand that the results of the pilot were mixed, but there is a view that it has a future, and I sincerely look forward to seeing that take place. The truth is that the Transport Board has to look at life differently. Clearly, we have 120,000 vehicles on the road, and the overwhelming majority of them are privately owned. That is probably close to 100,000. This in 2018. As recently as 1995, you had less than half that, 55,000 plus vehicles on the road. Obviously, in 1955, when the Transport Board was started, it would have been even much less than that. So I'm saying that the Transport Board that largely mirrors what was established in 1955 cannot function, and now we are well into the 21st century in 2018. the needs of the traveling public are going to be different. The role the Transport Board has to play. It was established, as we all know, the private operators and so on, to bring some more, you know, ease of operation, relying on Rocklin and all those private people providing public transportation, and all the laudable reasons why it had to be established. But the needs back then cannot be the needs now. And that is why I believe, as I mentioned, approaches such as what we are looking at with the Transport Authority Service Integration Program and so on, this is why they're critical. You know, we are reaching the point where, for example, the Transport Board has to have programs that attract and encourage people, even people who own vehicles, to leave them parked. But, you know, there are certain necessities that will have to take place, the reliability end of things, etc., if that is to become a reality. But you're going to have to see your work in that regard. And I myself also want to say that I am delighted to hear of this intention of electric vehicles now. I will say, and I was also delighted to hear the minister say, that if you're going to have buses powered by electricity, you better set it your photovoltaic farm as well for them, because you're not doing anything eco-friendly when you have to take an electric bus and plug it in to an electrical source that is getting electricity from the same hydrocarbons. Your carbon footprint ain't gone over. In fact, it can get worse. And there have been some studies done in some metropolitan countries where, you know, all the Teslas and these electric vehicles, and it turns out that everybody going home at night and plugging in the car, and it is even causing a bigger carbon footprint. So, you know, you have to look at it. But, and yes, greater instability and so on. And then, you know, everybody plug in the car, and then, yeah, you hear the lights start dipping and all kind of thing because the car is plugged in. So we have to think it out. But I think it's a wonderful initiative, and it is the kind of thing, of course, that we again is in keeping with the progressive approach that seems to have been infused the whole public transportation approach to public transportation over the last 10 years. And I, again, not only the member for Christchurch South should take some credit, and the member for the North for all that has been happening. Before I take my seat as well, I am delighted to hear of the soon-to-be completed river terminal. That I think is something that again has been needed for a long, long time, and that will, of course, where the journeys begin and end, and our passengers can enjoy, you know, better facilities, and of course, with all the appropriate amenities that go along with preparing you for your journeys, and our people who provide different business operations and so on, that they can have some comfort and again standards to operate in. I remember the Ministry of Health had some very serious concerns, and appropriately so. I mean, if you're selling food and the like, and you don't have running water and whatnot, you know, you could easily put people's health at risk. So I think that facility being completed at a few $1 million is not an expensive facility, $3 million, and we're delighted to see again order on our roads, but order in the terminus as well, because that too is all a part at getting at this phenomena that we have been calling over the years the be it the minibus culture, the ZR culture, the different, we refer to that negative element. But as we look to greater integration down the road, which I think is the only sensible way to go about this thing, we're happy about that terminal as well. So I'm, again, as I mentioned, totally in support of this particular supplementary resolution. I am glad to hear of the new buses, but I will continue to encourage the authorities at the ministry to see how they can integrate the so-called PSVs and the publicly owned buses as well. And I will say it's kind of fortuitous that the Minister of Education just joined us, because the same way that everything I said about the pilot program that the Transport Authority had with the integration, I too believe that there's nothing wrong with the question of our school buses using some of these private operators as well to get involved in carrying our school children to and from, as the minister spoke about it when he introduced the supplementary. And that too is an opportunity where we can also force people to have to maintain standards and discipline and the like. The truth is, it's already a roaring business out there. There are a lot of people, even some people who don't even have appropriate registration and so on, providing shuttle services and so on for school. I'm not talking about carpooling. I know parents carpooling. That's fine. But there are people who, you know, will offer a service transporting school children up and down neighborhoods and so on and doing it. And there's nothing wrong with that little entrepreneurism. I would like it if they would come above the radar instead of operating below the radar. That would be nicer. But the point is, you know, it shows that there's a demand out there. And if in the context of these many calls for a dedicated school bus service, which I know, you know, I mean, we've had that discussion. Again, that's been going on for decades, and it's a lot easier said than done, obviously. But in that context of how we get our children to and from school on mornings, and, well, mornings and evenings, afternoons, we can look also at involving the private sector players and regularizing a lot of them who are already out there earning some handsome gains by filling a demand that is there. So I think, Mr. Chairman, all in all, I have just expressed some thoughts that I had on this matter, and I will again encourage the minister to continue to work hard at the service integration project involving the PSVs, work hard at the electric bus pilot project as well, and of course continue to upgrade the fleet by not only looking at new buses, but by seeing how you can rebuild the existing fleet instead of being so quick to write off buses that still have the potential to serve this country. So I am delighted again to support this supplementary. I'm obliged to you.
Our member for St. Philip North.
Chairman, sir, I want to first endorse the comments. No, not wrapping up. Endorse the comments by the member for St. Michael South Central and also the member for Christchurch South. The fact that the private sector is already involved in the moving of school children. In fact, our information showed that there is a developing group of individuals who are engaged in shuttle services. There are about 10 so far, and it is growing. The interesting point that someone made to me recently is that Parkinson School, those school children are virtually moved by the private sector. daily you see the minibus go there. I mean, well behaved, no music on board, and they get to school on time, and they move on time. So I'm saying that our approach, as I said before in the opening, to the integration of private sector into the movement of school children, and as we engage in further talks with the Ministry of Education, there is some room for, of course, for that being expanded, not only at secondary school, but also the primary schools, because there's a challenge in relation to availability. Secondly, the member for Christchurch South also mentioned that the modernization of repair shops, particularly at MTW and also at Transport Board. Now, UCAL was established because of the problems associated with the then in-house repair shop of the Transport Board. And it was moved because of certain inefficiencies. But no, we had to come back to really expanding our in-house repairs. And that has resulted in a tremendous cost savings to the Transport Board. And I believe that if we expand the in-house repairs, modernize the operations, it would also result in more savings to the Transport Board. I believe that, I know in Trinidad, they have gone to the private sector into repairing their buses. I think they're now gone back now to doing in-house because they have modernized their mechanic workshop, and they're now gone back in-house because they believe that they can have controls over the repairs and also the costs to the institution. Now, Mr. Chairman, sir, I just want to, because, you know, when we look at cost savings, an example of how the said fleet consultant went about engaging in saving the Transport Board money. You know, and for example, Mr. Chairman, there was a part that cost the Transport Board some $2,632.94. After his engagement and going on the market, outside market, we were able to purchase that same part for only $700. And it goes on like this. One part here costs $244, costing Transport Board only $91. And all throughout the comparison, when we look at the comparison with the parts, cost of the parts, and traditional players, we were able to really bring about some tremendous savings to the Transport Board. I also want to say to the member for St. Michael South Central that we agreed to construct the river terminal because of the challenges that the passengers and also the operators of the minibus they were experiencing. There were no running water to the stalls, improper drainage, inadequate conditions for workers for the Transport Board, mayors and whatever general workers out there. And this went along for a long period of time. And we believe that once we upgrade that terminal, and the reason, Mr. Chairman, that, you know, as soon as rainfall, Bajans, the Barbadian public gravitate towards the Fraser Street terminal, and it becomes full. So the demand is greater. But we believe that if we put a facility out there, and the comparison, the same level of the Transport Board at Fraser Street terminal, proper lighting, proper security, they will feel safe and going over there and also catching all the private transport. Mr. Chairman, sir, before I say, I just want to draw to you, sir, the fact that Transport Board received a detailed analysis of the buses that were purchased in 2000, 2004, and 2006. It was sent to the then permanent secretary. And it suggested, Mr. Chairman, that from the inception, the transmissions were problematic. It further went on to say, sir, that on a daily basis, approximately 70 buses are off the road for repairs, with 20% of these repairs being major defects. Major repairs include engine replacements, overhauls, transmission replacements, overhauls, differential repairs, significant accident damage, and most of the engine repairs are due to overheating, which is a perennial problem, in almost every case of overheating. So these were the problems that existed, sir. From the buses in 2000, 2004, 2006, major problems, Mr. Chairman, that even the mechanics at Transport Board are still now trying to grapple with at this time. And this is not, I'm not casting any aspersion on any provider or any mechanic at Transport Board, but this is the reality. This is the stark reality, Mr. Chairman. And further, Mr. Chairman, sir, you know, only when we look, sir, at further information coming out of the Transport Board, sir, that sometime in 1998, at a meeting of the Transport Board, Board of Directors, the general manager reported that members from Trinidad, from the Public Transport Service Corporation of Trinidad, will be visiting the board on July 20th to look at buses that were recently purchased. But they were recently purchased by the Transport Board, yet they call in the same consultant to look at these buses that were recently purchased. So we are operating, sir, now on a playing field, sir, that all of these challenges existed over time and still existing. And we now have to look, sir, at moving in the direction of ensuring, sir, that we purchase a unit that will bring about some savings to the Transport Board, provide reliability, and of course, ensure that the service is adequate not only to school children, but also those passengers in the various terminals. Mr. Chairman, the member for Christchurch South also mentioned that he said that the MTW workshop, a massive workshop out there. You know, there's I think this started under the members of Christchurch South, but there's a paint booth that started and should hopefully be finished at the MTW workshop. And they said that not only should we be solely relying on the outside service providers to do the necessary body work, but I believe that MTW personnel can also assist in the body work of these buses because sometimes it is extremely costly to the Transport Board. I believe that it will result in a reduction, sir, a reduction of the expenditure that we experience in relation to body work, sir. Mr. Chairman, sir, the fact, sir, too, that we must also engage the local persons. L&M workshop, excellent workshop, excellent job. They built buses, they provide buses for the prison. And we looked and said, you know, we can purchase the chassis and utilizing the local manufacturer of L&M, that he can build those bus bodies, provide opportunities for those students from Polytechnic to be engaged and to build the buses locally, build some of the buses locally. And of course, it will take some time. But of course, we'll be engaging a local manufacturer and also giving those students from Polytechnic an opportunity to showcase their skill and have an outlet for them to, when they graduate, to come and also to get gainful employment. So we believe that these approaches, sir, can bring about a change to the public transport, and also the transport board, again, looking outside the traditional sources. And as I pointed out, examples to you, sir. And the fact, sir, that I repeat again, sir, that in 2016 to 2017, we spent almost $11 million on diesel. $11 million on diesel. And the member for St. Michael South Central correctly mentioned, sir, that the use of, as engaged in the public sector smart energy program that started and seeking to include the use of electric buses, and given the fact there are savings in it too, sir, that $11 million can come down, sir, can come down once we engage and once we seek to purchase some of these electric buses, sir, to bring down the cost of taxpayers, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Honourable member for Christchurch, East Central.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I just want to say a few things on this supplementary. I think that there's some useful suggestions coming from the minister and obviously the staff of the Transport Board, as well as those individuals in the leadership of the public service vehicles. And there are things that we must take on board if we are to create a seamless transportation system in Barbados. Right now, we are not at that stage. We're still, to some extent, like we are playing hopscotch. And if you're not a very good player, that means you're not able to jump properly and to pick up whatever is your play with to move it forward. So whether stone or whatever it is, you use a stone because the crudity of that, but it's more enhanced now. It's like road tennis. If you see what the fellas play with now, it has migrated from your initial creation in 1945 to what it is now in 2018. And right, so I just want to make that point, rather than just talking about the stone, it's something else now they use. The point is that even with the large number of other vehicles on our roads, cars and trucks and vans that move goods and move people, we're still having some difficulty in this relatively small island to find the right mix to as I said earlier, having this seamless movement of workers and citizens and school children and goods and other related services. And we have to bring this whole dilemma to its knees. Over the last several months, and even before then, and this is not a criticism because we're searching for a solution to some of these challenges. And they've always been challenges, but we have to use our creativity, our knowledge, our innovation, whatever it is we have, that know-how. And we can do that to resolve these issues. But I was making the point that over the last year or so, we've been having some hiccups in the movement of school children, particularly between 6:30 and 10 o'clock. Now, by 8:45, all of our children should be in school. We have about 3 or 4 schools who have a variation on their time schedules. School at St. Michael, Lodge, St. Leonard's, boys, and I believe one other. They begin earlier than other schools. And that means that they're moving earlier in the morning and also moving earlier in the evening. So it means that if you have this one system, you talk about school buses, but they're really not school buses in the sense of what we call school buses. They are part of the total fleet. So there must be diversion sometimes in and out in order to satisfy the need of our school sector. Now, we don't want to have so much downtime as a result of a service that is not as efficient or as effective as it should be. I prefer to say effective as it should be. And sometimes, based on the disciplinary principles of a school, the students who, through no fault of their own, might have to suffer the consequences of getting to school late, of being tardy. But I'm sure that there is an understanding among school leaders that, especially those that lie in the northern and eastern part of the country, if you start to look at Darrell Jordan, Coleridge and Parry, Alexandra, the Allen School, Grantley Adams, you find that we have the greatest level of difficulty in those parts of the world. For some reason, Lodge seems to function better in that context, even though there are still some challenges as you move to that easternmost part of Barbados, near to Messiah Street. So this unruly, that's what I'm going to call it, system that we have, where you have a transport board, you have ZRs, you have minibuses, and the private movement is a hustle. It's a hustle. The integration that the minister has spoken about, and which I support, because it should be a totally integrated system, totally integrated, on schedules where the remuneration or the purchase of the ticket or whatever you have can be at a level which can satisfy reasonable demands of our citizens. If the state wants to create a, what do you call it? Because it's a social good as well as an economic good. Let's understand that. Transportation systems the world over is an economic good. People make money by plying different routes. People use airlines. That's a form of transportation, and they make money. So you would have to have maybe the state providing some level of subsidy to keep the cost at a level that can be afforded by those who, but the subsidy is to the transport board. To the transport board. The transport board gets support. But I'm talking about the overall system, because I know that there's significant pressures on the minister and on the transport authority, I believe, for a freeing up of the price. Right now, the maximum is $2. It's $2. But there are persons who would want to take it up. I do not know what they want to take it up to. But if you're an entrepreneur, you want to make money on your investment. So the state itself has to look at how many people we move across Barbados on any given day, week, month, year. And if the private concessionaires can provide you with some knowledge of their take, which is going to be a shady area, we provide the subsidy to the transport board, and you know those figures. Well, I would assume that you reasonably know those figures. But they want to participate in the subsidy to keep costs down. Then they have to declare those takings, the numbers they move, the money they make, and all of that, so that you can arrive at a reasonably cost, inclusive of subsidy, to move Barbadians across the country, and visitors, because there are more and more visitors now using PSVs and the buses of the transport board to move around and to move about Barbados. So that has to be the case. I know in our country, persons are very, very scared or concerned about disclosing what it is they make. How much money do you make in doing this? They keep these things very shrouded, very hidden, away from, inverted commas, the government, because there's this view that the government wants to peep under them. The government wants to see what it is they do so they can put more taxes on. In this instance, that is not my concern. My concern is that a social ethos, a social structure starts to break up or break down when you have this erratic in disciplined movement of citizens across the country. And even though there's been some improvement, significant improvement, there is still some unruly behavior associated with some of the persons really who drive the buses, because buses and coaches and things of themselves really are only instruments of movement, the equipment for movement. It has to be the personnel who operate and cause that kind of dislocation within the given environment. I believe that we have to, you see this whole notion of a ZR, which I believe are the smaller, those smaller ones. We have to migrate from those. We really have to migrate from those, and I think the state has to provide, again, some incentives for migration. And I've heard the representative for St. Lucie speak to this before, where at least the minimum seating capacity to move Barbadians must be 30, minimum. And to migrate over maybe a 3 to 5 year period with the state support to move away from those ZRs. And any vehicle with one door outside of the door at the front, and people get out, to me is a hazardous vehicle. And I do not know if they were ideally made outside of the hectic spaces of Hong Kong to move people. I really don't know that. I keep saying to the Lord, Lord, I pray that you will give me the capacity to at least be able to even to ride a bicycle so that I don't have to take a ZR. Every morning I get up, I almost make that similar prayer. Because half of the bus has to get out for 2 people to get out. But it's an entrepreneurial activity, so you have to migrate. They have to migrate. And the state has to provide the incentives for the migration from these 12, 14, 18 seating things. We have to be shifting about left and right, and half the people getting off, and for you to get out, if you're in the back, you have to climb over the shoulders and backs of people. But give you a vehicle which can carry 30 or more with 2 doors, at least 2 doors for passenger entrance and exit in this case. Entrance, use one as a control mechanism. So that is something that the state sector has to look at. I supported the integration, and one area in my constituency benefited. I believe it has deteriorated now. That was Ely Village. They have benefited from the early integration of the PSVs and Transport Board. Because hitherto, it's not a large area, so you didn't have the frequency of Transport Board buses, even though you had Transport Board buses passing there. But that integration caused a free up of some more seats. But people are not going to keep running to an area where the numbers are not that significant. So it has to be scheduled between 6 or extended it further up in maybe into Fair Pilgrim and places like that, right? Which Fair Pilgrim South, Fair Pilgrim as you move in that general direction. So it was a good idea, but we have, as it was a pilot, but we have to look to full integration of the transportation system of Barbados, public transportation system of Barbados. And also to have, as I mentioned earlier, this movement away from those smaller ZR buses to greater capacity type buses in the transportation system. And I want the minister or the government really to find a way of getting our children to school on time or before time. I always go before time because there's always a settling period. We have found in the system that persons who get to school late because of transportation difficulties are irritable. They're not able to settle down because you need 10 to 15 minutes before school starts to settle down. Have a little water or something to snack on, have a chat with your friends, prepare yourself for praise and worship, and then to go to your class prepared, settled to take on the learning activities of the day. But when you are frustrated and you're hustling and you're hoping that the principal or some other supervisor of the school is not there watching and waiting for you to give you a late slip to go into detention, that creates a lot of unnecessary agitation. So in a new term of office, that is something that has to be settled quite quickly. And we also have really, we closed down 1 or 2 schools, like school in St. Andrew, Hillaby, Turners Hall, and moving the children down to Air DaCosta Edwards, where we've had difficulty in moving those students from Hillaby and in those areas to Air DaCosta Edwards. And parents can become very irritated when a promise made is not delivered. And the same thing with those students who were moved from Society, after we closed Society, over to St. Mark's. But St. Mark's now become the major center because St. Margaret's only had the class 4s, etc. And until a new school is built in that general locale. Yeah, and Black Mongolia, where they come from down in St. George, Watts Village, and some of those other areas. To go there, you're going to have problems because that was done on the same premise that those students who were at South District would have been able to be transported. It's not very far, but it's a good walk. But they also would be having challenges, and we don't want to interrupt the study habits of those students. So that has to be looked at as well. We'll be having also, Mr. Chairman, some challenges with what some people constantly assume is a middle-class area, Kingsland, movement of vehicles. It's not an easy area to maneuver for large buses because it's the way it was developed. And if you don't know the area, you're going to have some difficulty going through it, even though there's one central road called Kingsland Drive, back into Bawater and then take on Water Street, Lodge Road, and go to St. Patrick's, etc. But the infrequency, so persons cannot plan their movement appropriately. But with a fully integrated system, seamless movement, they'll be better able to do that. The whole rationale in the breakup of a centralized system has caused severe hardship on the transport board. Because you're saying, well, the government can operate at a loss because subsidies can be provided, while the other fellows can operate at a profit, short routes, lucrative routes. All of that is given to but it isn't the owners of these vehicles that you blame or that you can blame. Those who were in charge of the system who should take the blame. And this goes back really for a very long time. That dismantling of possibly one of the best transportation systems we had in the Caribbean, maybe outside of a place like Puerto Rico. Barbados had a system that was the envy of persons in the OECS, of persons in Trinidad and Tobago, of persons in Jamaica. But they have now made significant strides in working a system while we have somehow stepped back. And previously, I still believe there's some erratic behavior. The Wild West ruled. A society can't have the rule of the Wild West now in these contemporary or these so-called these postmodern times. So I support the money for the transport board. They still try to do good work, but they do it at a cost that is horrendous, too heavy a load to carry. A situation of having to pay $300,000 for a bus. I mean, I don't understand that you can get buses today at $60,000 if you're buying it as an individual. Obviously, you're going to have some markup and that kind of thing. But you can't have a bus costing $300,000. Huh? In 2006. $340,000? I mean, I don't understand it. How are you going to recover paying $2 the cost of that bus in the first instance, not even including the operation thereof, where you have to put in diesel, where you have to pay the operator, the person who drives the bus, where you have to pay for the cleaning of the bus, fixing back some seat that might become damaged or otherwise worn. I mean, this is horrendous. We have to look at the cost of our buses, and we have to have the kind of appropriate brands that are suited to our terrain. I remember the days of the Mercedes-Benz and all of the I used to, I believe those caused me to suffer motion sickness. Because, and if you sat at the back, the nausea that were generated from those was like, I go in school. So I always used to avoid sitting anywhere near the back, where that movement was like some accelerated, I would call it. But we've passed those days. But we need to find buses, coaches to move our people that are cheaper. I see the coaches deployed in the tourism sector, and they seem to always be up, because what they do is preventative maintenance. 2 minutes. It's preventative maintenance. Transport board has to do preventative maintenance as well, not wait until the bus breaks down and then you move in. If you don't do preventative maintenance on airlines, none of us would fly. We would simply teleport. I mean, I'm waiting for that day where teleportation becomes normal routine of life. But we're not yet at that stage. So we have to do preventative maintenance to ensure that the monies of the citizens and taxpayers of Barbados are better protected within that context. But my support for the Transport Board has been doing a Herculean task with limited resources. I thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Our member for Christ yourself.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that you do not report progress to his honourable Speaker and ask for leave to sit again. Beg to second that.
Okay. Question is that I do not report progress to his honourable Speaker and ask to leave to sit again. All our members in favour, please say aye. Aye. All our members against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Yes, honourable members, this full sitting is resumed. Members, your chairman of committees has reported progress and asked for leave to sit again. Yes, honourable leader.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that the sitting be suspended until 2 o'clock this evening.
Honourable members, the question is that the sitting be now suspended until 2 p.m. Honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it. Accordingly, this House now stands suspended until 2 p.m.